Y'all see the title, man. Let's get to it.
Today's video is pretty straightforward. Although people almost universally agree that these legends are the greatest basketball players to ever live, I still believe there are certain aspects of their game that is very underappreciated. Today, I want to place a spotlight on those underrated aspects, which for one, should have some value for basketball education, but I also think this information can help equip you better when debating your list of the greatest players of all time. So without further ado, let's get into it. First off, Michael Jordan. To me, the most underrated aspect of Michael Jordan's game was definitely his shot blocking. If MJ isn't the greatest shot blocking guard in the history of the game, then he's certainly in the top 3. On defense, Michael was a very sneaky and intelligent player who could read a defense and respond accordingly as the help defender. Combine that with his insane quickness.
Often he anticipated where the offensive player would place the ball when they're going for their finish and just reach over. You know what I'm saying?
Agility, and leaping ability, and you have the recipe for an all-time great shot-blocking wing. MJ has the most blocks by a guard in a single season, which was a total of 131 in the 87-88 season, and unsurprisingly, that was the season he won the Defensive Player of the Year. Not only is he first on the all-time list, but he
averaged like 30. How much he averaged?
He's also in the second spot as he blocked 125 shots in the 86-87 season. When people argue between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, this is an aspect that usually goes under the radar. Sure, LeBron certainly has the more famous shot blocking highlights, but contrary to popular belief, Jordan actually blocked more shots per game over the course of their careers, regardless of the fact that he's 3 inches shorter and plays a perimeter position. Make sure you never overlook Jordan's shot swatting accomplishments when considering who's the most complete player. Next is LeBron James. In my opinion, the most underrated aspect of LeBron's game is certainly his clutch gene. I'm not just talking about buzzer beaters or one-possession shots in the final 30 seconds, but I'm talking about playoff situations where everything was on the line and showing up in a big way. Of course,
we're going to talk about the Game 7s. Yeah,
LeBron has the awful 2011 finals on his resume, but far too many people act like his career ended then and there. Since then, LeBron has been constantly dominating meaningful games in the postseason. This is what he averaged in the 2011 finals, and in his 45 NBA Finals games since then, these are the numbers he's averaged, as he's nearly been an efficient and consistent 30-point triple-double on the game's biggest stage. Throughout his career, LeBron has played a total of 8 Game 7s, and in those games, he's averaged 34.9 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 5.6 assists on 48.7% shooting. With a minimum of 3 Game 7s played, that is the highest Game 7 scoring average in NBA history. In this modern day, if you're still saying that LeBron isn't a clutch player, then someone needs to yank you out of the year 2011. Next is...
yeah, Bron is definitely a clutch player. I think often people end up comparing them to Michael Jordan's clutchness, which is the most clutch player in ever, So it's like LeBron's not that clutch, but he's definitely one of the most clutch players of all time, definitely.
Is Wilt Chamberlain. The most underrated part of his game was his incredibly skillful scoring. Everybody knows this Goliath-like figure was a remarkable blend of strength and athleticism, as he averaged as high as 50.4 points in the 1960s. But often the misconception that people make is that Chamberlain dominated the game simply using brute force, similar to how Shaq did it in the early 2000s, but to an even more dramatic extent. Although Wilt was certainly capable and would occasionally overpower players, he also had one of the greatest fadeaway jump shots in the history of the game. Imagine Dirk Nowitzki.
You see that when we react to the Wilt highlights.
Unstoppable fadeaway, but instead of it coming from a 7-foot player with a 7'3" wingspan, it was coming from a 7'1" player with a 7-foot 8-inch wingspan. That was what Wilt Chamberlain was doing in his prime. Not only is there complete compilation videos of him doing that shot, but there are numerous testimonies of Wilt dominating entire games almost exclusively with his jump shot. Next up, Kareem AbdulJabbar. Just like Michael Jordan,
I heard stories that Wilt would go out of his way to prove people wrong with certain things, like, but almost like at the cost of his own, sacrificing his game just to prove something to somebody. I heard he used to not shoot when people used to say he couldn't pass. He used to just hold the ball until somebody get open. That's what I heard of players' stories.
Then Kareem's most underrated skill was his shot blocking. When it comes to the captain, everyone wants to talk about how he was the NBA's all-time leading scorer for many years, and about his iconic sky hook. But what is often overlooked is the fact that he was one of the greatest rim protectors to ever live, as he was officially a league leader in blocks per game in 4 separate seasons, getting as high as 4.1 in 1976. Not only did Kareem used to be the NBA's all-time leading scorer, but he should be the league's all-time leader in blocked shots as well. The reason for this is because the NBA didn't start tracking blocked shots until the 1973-74 season, which means that the first 4 years of Kareem's career, his blocks did not count towards his total. Over his career, he averaged 199 blocks per season, and that includes his twilight years where he was playing less minutes. So even by a conservative estimate, Kareem presumably would have been the all-time leader over Hakeem Olajuwon. With that being considered, I'm very comfortable suggesting that this is a part of his game that doesn't get enough shine. Next, let's take a look at Magic Johnson, whose most underrated skill was his ability to score at will. Magic was a savant with the basketball, as he's arguably the greatest passer that the game of basketball has ever seen.
Yeah, Magic is different, bro. Like, Magic is different. I gotta react to some more Magic. Magic's gonna be getting enough love on my channel. I gotta react to some more Magic. That's why I love to react to these just old school basketball videos. They bring my knowledge back, make me remember players I've been forgetting about and haven't been reacting to in a little while.
This was his bread and butter, and he's famous for being the successful, flashy leader of the Lakers' Showtime offense. There's no question that Magic's natural preference was being a distributor. But with that being said, Magic could have...
It's extra swaggy though, like, see how you look, like, it wasn't even a regular look off, like, it wasn't even regular, you know what I'm saying, just a regular look. He said,
Magic's natural preference was being a distributor. But with that being said, Magic could have been a leading scorer whenever it was necessary. He was very reliable with his back to the basket, as he used his size over the smaller guards to be a fantastic post scorer. He also had a very dependable baby hook shot, which he used frequently throughout his career. Magic had 6 games in his career where he scored at least 40 points, and specifically in the 1987 NBA Finals, he led all players in points, outscoring even the legendary Larry Bird and Kareem AbdulJabbar, as he averaged 26.2 points over the series while still getting 13 assists per game. The 89-90 season was the first year after Kareem AbdulJabbar's retirement, and because of this, Magic had to take on a heavier load as a scorer, and he did that extremely well. In the 1990 postseason, Magic averaged 25.2 points per game, which was the 3rd highest scoring average of all players in those playoffs, trailing only Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing. If he wasn't so unselfish as a giver, he likely would have been one of the best scorers from the 80s.
That's a fact, though.
Of course, we gotta follow up Magic with Larry Bird. Honestly, it's hard for me to pick Bird's most underrated trait between his rebounding and his defense, but I think I'll have to give the slight edge to his defense. Now don't get me wrong, Bird was not a defender on the level of Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen. But at the same time, you wouldn't be wrong if you described him as one of the elite defenders of his era. A lot of people make the mistake of assuming Larry was a below-average defender, probably because on the surface level, he looks like a slow and unathletic player, but it couldn't be further from the truth. I would argue that hustle and effort are the most important qualities of an elite defender, and Bird played with both of those attributes.
Nah, facts. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Every time he set foot on the court. He may not have had the quickest feet, but he had extremely quick hands, as he averaged an extremely impressive 1.7 steals over the course of his career, as he was regularly among the league leaders in steals per game. One of the most impressive performances in Bird's career was in 1985 against the Utah Jazz, when he nearly got a quadruple-double, pouring in 30 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and a whopping 9 steals on 59% shooting. One other key detail, Larry didn't even play in the fourth quarter of that game.
Oh yeah, that's when he sat out in the fourth, and then I think one of his teammates was like, "Yo, get back in there, you can get a quadruple double." It never been done before. He like, I don't care about that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
It was a blowout.
That's tough.
If Larry had stayed in the game, not only could he have got a quadruple-double, but he may have set the record for the most steals ever in a single NBA game. For his career, Larry made a total of 3 All-Defense teams, and he was 3rd overall in the Defensive Player of the Year voting in 1983. And even the defensively legendary Tim Duncan has never finished higher in the Defensive Player of the Year race than Larry Bird has. So if anyone ever makes it seem like Bird wasn't a good defensive player, quickly educate them on how little they know about basketball in the 80s. Next, let's take a look at Bill Russell. To me, easily the most underrated part of Russell's game was his leaping ability. For some reason, everybody talks about the incredible athleticism of Wilt Chamberlain, yet Bill Russell's jaw-dropping ability becomes somewhat of an afterthought. It's quite insane how 2 of the most athletically gifted centers in NBA history both conveniently played in the 1960s. Some of you may have not seen the clip where Russell is sprinting on a fast break, and then he jumps clear over the opposing defender on his way to converting the basket. This single play is evidence of his world-class leaping ability, and when I say world-class, I'm not being facetious. In 1956, Bill Russell participated in the West Coast Relays high jump competition. In this contest, Bill cleared 6 feet 9.25 inches, which tied him for first place with Charlie Dumas. Russell could have went on to the Olympics that year, but instead, he decided to focus on his basketball career. The man he tied with, Charlie Dumas, went on to win the Olympic gold medal in the high jump competition. Luckily for him, he didn't have the insanely competitive Bill Russell going up against him. At the time, Track and Field News had Russell ranked as the 7th best high jumper in the world, and as the 2nd best high jumper in the United States. All of that absurd athleticism was packed into a 6 foot 10 inch frame. It's no wonder why he won.
I ain't gonna lie, youngins, get that. Go do some track. Go do some track and field. Cause I remember after my first varsity season. Well, I only played one varsity season because I ended up never playing because COVID came and all that. But yeah, after my first varsity season, I ended up doing track, and my brothers and sisters, I'm telling you right now, it took my bounce to another level. I will not lie. That and the Vertimax.
Fun so much.
That shit get you bouncy.
This is just part 1 of an ongoing series, and in part 2, we'll be taking a look at other players like Kobe, Duncan, Shaq, Hakeem, and Steph Curry. So stay tuned for that. So what do you guys think?
That's the end of this one, y'all. If y'all enjoyed, man, you know what to do. Share the video with your people on your social media platforms. Click on the last reaction on your screen right now. Like the video, comment, subscribe, and I'm out of here, man.